drop it. There you go. All right.
There it is.
Now,
Yeah.
do you see that okay? Does that look okay?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So I did I think it was 7 videos, Jews versus Gentiles. And I pointed in here that all these prophecies show Gentiles equal 12 tribes.
Right.
So, and this is real easy to show. In fact, you've got all these people with, doctorates, you got PhDs or whatever little letters beside their name involved in teaching the message of Christ. And whether it's theology or whatever it is, if they're teaching the Bible, they should have looked up Gentiles and determined what Gentiles is. And if they're telling you that Gentiles are not 12 tribes, then they're either lying to you or they got a doctorate and they never looked up the context of Gentiles. Real easy to tell the context of Gentiles as the 12 tribes. It's easy. Not even difficult.
Well, yeah, if you look it up. Yeah, but most people don't ever look it up, and they just assume that it means non-Israelites.
You can't get a. I'm looking for my Bible. I have it laying here somewhere. I don't know where I set it. Okay. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. I had to move it out of the way temporarily. If you look up the cross references, and you can just start with the very first one is Gentiles in the New Testament, for example, is Matthew 4:16, I believe. You want to start with that one, the first one?
Well, yeah, let me go there.
I think it's the people which sat in darkness saw a great light. And to them which sat in the region and shadow of death, light is sprung up. Well, that's actually a cross-reference to, if you look in your cross-reference Bible, it's a cross-reference to Isaiah 42:7. And there are no words Gentiles in Isaiah until you get to like chapter 43, I believe.
Okay.
Let's see, it might show it, maybe 42:7 in Isaiah is Gentiles. But at any rate, the Gentiles was in verse 15, the one just above that, where it used the term Gentiles. And that cross-references to Isaiah 9:1-2, if you look at your cross-reference Bible. The problem is you get up to Isaiah 9:1-2, and look at that. There is no word Gentiles in Isaiah.
Right.
Until you get to at least whatever it said here, 42:7, and I haven't looked it up.
Right.
Well,
the people shall see a great light. That's the reference of the 2 tribes, Zebulun, and I forget what the other tribe is, Naphtali. I believe it's Zebulun and Naphtali, who were living in Palestine, and they were never completely, expelled from Palestine. There was a remnant of those 2 tribes, and that prophecy. It pertains to those 2 tribes exclusively, that they would see a great light, namely Yahshua Messiah. They would be there to see him when he walked the earth. And so it's obviously a reference to 2 Israelite tribes and nobody else.
Yeah, well, it's worse than that. And here's the problem. If you go back to Isaiah, and it's 42:6 in mine, and it mentions the light of the Gentiles to open. So it's basically the copy's the same thing here says here. Problem is, when you're here in Isaiah, if you start in chapter 40, it's talking about the 12 tribes, or children of Israel, house of Judah, however you want to look at it. It's talking about the 12 tribes. It's not talking about people who are not part of Israel.
Right.
And
exactly.
I've got a chart here, and let me just flip over to that chart here real quick, and I'll show you, and you can just pull that up. If you go back to my website, you are looking at my webpage now, right?
Yep. That's it.
I put Pastor Ramsey's new book. That's a really good book, by the way. God Made a Racial Choice. At any rate, scroll down my site and just look. You'll see I've got a page here. It says Jews versus Gentiles. And click on that. And that's just basically a one-page summary of all the terms Gentiles in the New Testament. Oh, it was Matthew 4:15. It says that right there.
Yeah.
So, and you'll see what those either cross-reference to or quote. And the problem with, and then I put all those in the context, and my, you could probably figure out most of these, but you see this one that says non-12T, meaning it doesn't apply to the 12 tribes. But most of these are 12 tribes. Now you see I've got a few,
Right.
12 tribes, 12 tribes. But most of them I've got on here are actually JAC, which is, and I just use it as Jews against Christ and Jews for Christ, because that's your two groups of Israelites in the, your Bible calls them Jews, but they're Israelites in the New Testament.
Right.
And then I've separated them as the ones you can go, I put the quotes like 42:6, 42:6, you can see all that.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. Now, the problem with this is that when you go back to, here's the issue that everybody misses. When you go back over here to Matthew 4:15, well, where does that go? Where does that, do you have a cross-reference Bible, by the way?
No, not handy.
All right, well, let me give you the cross-reference. Right here in the cross-reference Bible, it takes you over to Luke. And where it's taking you to, it's the cross-reference to right here, this first use of the word Gentile. Now, any pastor, even if you don't have a degree, if you're just looking and you want to see where that goes to, you'd use your cross-reference Bible. And where does that take you? Well, you come over here to Luke, and I'm going to get my Ferrari because I've got it all highlighted in my Ferrari.
Okay.
I don't have it highlighted here.
Okay, well, while you're getting that, in Matthew 4:15, it says Galilee of the Gentiles, which is a horrible translation because Galilee was filled with Israelites exclusively. There weren't any other people besides Israelites living in Galilee. Okay.
Yeah, well, you're gonna like this a little better. Go here to Luke chapter 1 and go to verse 26. Now, what you're gonna find here is when you get over here to Luke, this is the same. This whole section here, starting with about verse 26 approximately, talks about the Messiah being announced. Are you there?
Right.
Okay.
Luke 1, what?
Luke chapter 1, start with about verse 26. This is your cross-reference. From 26 up to the end of chapter 1 of Luke, all of this is connected, speaking about in the same context as Matthew 4:15 about the Gentiles, the light, and what it said over there in Isaiah 42. Same context. But look at what it says in Luke. Now in Luke, you have three different entities here speaking, telling you the same thing. It starts out in verse 26. It says, this is when Gabriel, the angel. Now, this is an angel coming to Mary, right? Right. Was sent from God to a town of Galilee named Nazareth to a maiden named Joseph, blah, blah, blah. And Mary was the name of the maiden. The messenger on the ending said, good health to you, blah, blah, blah. Now, it said, fear not, you have received a gift from God. You shall conceive and give birth to a son. You shall give the name of Jesus. Now, we all know that. So here's a angel, Gabriel. He'll be greatly distinguished, called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord shall give to him the throne of his father David. Okay? His father David, remember, just
who was an Israelite.
Hold your finger there and go back to the first verse of the New Testament. This goes back to the first verse of the New Testament. What's the first verse?
In Matthew?
Of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. This is Christ prophesied to be the son of David, which is what we're talking about. And it also says Christ is prophesied to be the son of Abraham.
Right.
Now, I'm going to prove to you beyond a doubt that Abraham spoke to Christ.
Okay.
The entity. The entity.
Sure.
Now, you can call it pre-incarnate Christ or whatever you want to call it. But
the Spirit,
Abraham spoke to Christ. When they were at Mount Sinai, they were speaking to Christ. It was Christ that came down. Whatever the words it uses, it was Christ, the entity, Christ. That's who they were speaking to. However, Abraham had the concept of receiving everlasting life for himself and his offspring, and that Christ would come physically from him.
Okay. All right.
Now, this is very important, and everybody
descent from him.
Let's get back on track. The point I'm trying to make about Gentiles. Let's go back to Luke. All right, so His father David, that's the prophecy. He shall reign over the house of Jacob. Really? Well, I
Yeah.
thought over there he was going to be a light to the Gentiles. But over here
Yeah.
it says
Right.
he's reigning over the house
Yeah.
of Jacob. That's all 12
Yeah.
tribes, right?
Right.
All right. Throughout the ages, his reign shall never end. Does that sound like he's going to reign over the Gentiles? It doesn't sound that way to
No.
me. Now, Mary says,
No.
now we know everybody can read this. All right. Then he says, the Holy Spirit will shine on you, and power from above shall overshadow you.
Mm.
Power from above. Where did that come from? Oh, that's a prophecy to Israel. Remember that
Right.
prophecy?
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
what the word Israel meant. When that angel changed Jacob's name to Israel, it meant power with God.
Right.
That's what the word Israel means. And here he's telling her this is coming true. That prophecy to
Right.
Jacob is coming true in you, which is also a prophecy. All right.
Sure.
So people understood this. It's only today that no one seems to understand it. So at any rate, power from above. The result should be the Son of God, and your kinswoman Elizabeth has also conceived a son. So that was
Yeah.
John.
Okay. Well, all right.
Now,
So the problem is the way the nation or ethnos is translated in Matthew 4:15, because Galilee is a territory that was housing exclusively Israelites. So it means Galilee of the nations is the proper translation, and it's talking about the 10 lost tribes,
well, of course it
or
was.
all 12, or all
Right.
12.
Well, generally
Yeah.
it's all, well, the house of Jacob is all 12. So
Yes.
in reality, it's always about all 12 tribes coming back together. But
Right.
you do have individual prophecies to the house of Israel versus the house of Judah. And
Right.
you
Right.
always have individual prophecies that really only apply to one, but it's always about all 12 tribes coming back
Right.
together. And we're gonna see this before we finish this thing. We're gonna see all of that we just talked about. But just
Right.
continue through Luke. You got three accounts here. You've got three different accounts. So then you get down to the Song of Elizabeth, and look at what she said about the honor coming to her, and blah blah blah. And she's really talking about Christ. And you go on down. And going down, he has scattered the haughty by his own designs. That's verse 51. He has grasped Israel, 54, his
Right.
son by the hand. Okay, now
Mm-hmm.
this is her prophecy, here, or her rendition of the prophecy. All right. To
Right.
call his mercy to remembrance. Now look at verse 72, same thing. Remember his holy covenant in verse 72. It's the same little cross reference there. All right, go back to 55, which he promised to our forefathers. He didn't promise anything to the Gentiles.
That's right.
She's saying
Our
here he's
forefathers.
fulfilling that prophecy in the Old Testament. There was no New Testament. They're not creating new teaching. Now, over
Yeah.
there in Matthew, where we came from, it looks like, oh, we're getting into some new teaching about some other people who are not part of Israel, and they're going to,
Right.
the Christ is going to come light on them. That's the way everybody reads it.
Right. Yeah. They read it
We're
wrong. Yeah.
still on the first cross reference, Eli. We haven't even got
I
the
know.
first cross reference. This is going to get really good if we keep going. But let's just keep going. 55, and to Abraham his heir forever.
Right. His seed forever. Right.
But that ain't all. Let's just continue. Keep on going. Keep on going. You read on down. Talks about more kindred, blah, blah, blah. And then you get up to Zacharias in verse 67. He spoke with the Holy Spirit. So under the Spirit, he spoke. Let the Lord, the God of Israel, so we haven't changed context, because
Right.
he has regarded and redeemed his people. He ain't
Right.
redeeming Gentiles.
No, he redeemed the Gentiles.
He's redeeming his people,
Right.
just like it was always been promised all the way back to Abraham. Now, we're going to show that Abraham knew that too. Even if we don't do
Yeah.
it today, we'll get to it. He's raised up for us the horn of deliverance. Well, the horn is a king of
Right.
deliverance, king of salvation, king of
Right.
righteousness. The horn of deliverance is the promise back there in Genesis 14 about Melchizedek. That
Yeah,
was
in the house of his servant Jesse. I'm saying his servant David. Clearly, again, it's the house of Judah, line of Judah.
right. King of righteousness. He's the king of Melchizedek, the king of kings. There's
Yes.
more kings that are in the Melchizedek order, but Christ is the king over those kings, right? All right.
Right.
So that's what he says. That's what he's talking about right here. In the house of David, his son. That's the
Yeah.
prophecy. Declared through the mouth, as he declared through the mouth of his holy prophets for ages. So he's saying he's fulfilling prophecy in the prophets. Where can
Right.
any person, I don't care what letters they got by their name, you show me any person on the face of this earth that can show prophecies about the Gentiles receiving Christ,
Yeah, the
salvation,
non-Israelites.
everlasting life,
Right.
any of it. Show it
There
to me.
isn't.
There
There
is
isn't.
no prophecy.
Uh-huh. And there's no verse promising any such thing.
All right.
So yeah. So one of the problems is the word
Let's
Gentiles, how it's
just
translated.
go a few more verses. All right.
Okay.
So deliverance from our foes, from the hand of all who hate us. That's verse 71. To show mercy as towards our forefathers. That's what was promised. Okay. And to remember his holy covenant, which I said related, which he sealed by an oath to our forefather Abraham. Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what was
Yeah.
the oath he sealed to his forefather then? To show mercy, and he was supposed
Mm-hmm.
to have mercy on those who follow God's law. That's, if you
That's
remember
right.
the Ten Commandments, that's commandment number 2. You go back and read commandment number 2. He will show mercy for thousands of generations to those who follow God's law, and the law was only given to the children of Israel at Mount Sinai, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
all this is
Right.
prophecy, and he's giving it this is Zacharias doing it under the Holy Spirit, okay? To grant us redeemed from our enemies' hand, blah, blah, blah. Yes, your child should be chosen a prophet of the highest. That's verse 76. That's Melchizedek. Talking about
Mm-hmm.
Melchizedek. You shall go before by instructing his people in the way, his people, that's verse 77. Not talking about Gentiles, instructing his people in the way of salvation with a
Right.
pardon of their sins. Have mercy on them for the ones that follow God's law. Direct our feet in the path of peace. That's verse 79, then it ends at verse 80. So where do you get any of this
Well,
here
yeah,
in
right.
Luke? And all
And
those
the verse 80 talks
get
about
three
his being shown unto Israel. He was shown unto Israel, not to
three
the Gentiles.
you have 3 witnesses here. You got
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel, then you got Mary, and then the last part was Zacharias under the Spirit. This is a
Right.
triple witness of all these prophecies of the Old Testament coming through Christ to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, his people, the chosen, Melchizedek,
Right.
all of that. All right here in the first one of Luke. You don't even need to go any farther than that to convince
Right.
yourself if you want to learn something about Scripture and believe it.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, here let's go to Romans chapter 11, verse 24, because we have something similar going on here, and I think actually in Romans verse 1. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's go to Romans 11:1. I say then, hath God cast away his people? Who are his people? Israel, of
Never
course.
changed.
God forbid. For I also am an Israelite, not a Gentile. Paul is not the apostle to the Gentiles. He's an apostle to Israel. The problem is the word Gentile has been inserted into the King James and other translations where it does not belong. It gives a false impression of who Paul is talking to here. Of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. So clearly Paul is telling us he is an Israelite, a direct descendant of Abraham, and a member of the tribe of Benjamin. By the way, most of the tribe of Benjamin lived in Galilee. However, Paul lived in Tarsus because all of the 12 tribes, they were scattered all over the Greco-Roman world, but the vast majority of Benjamin lived in Galilee. and other Israelite tribes lived up there as well. Okay, and that's where Nazareth was. That's where Yahshua lived most of his life when he was in Palestine. He lived most of his life in Galilee, not in Jerusalem, not in Judah. He only went there for the feast days and for the Holy Week when he was crucified. So he was rarely in Jerusalem. Okay. Again, Romans 11:2, second verse. God hath not cast away his people, which he foreknew. Think you not his scripture saith of Elias, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel? Again, the prophecy is about Israel. It's not about anybody else. So if it weren't for this word Gentile being thrown in where it does not belong, none of this would be misunderstood. Now let's
would simply say nations, and then people would go look to see what the context of nations are. And as soon as they look, they would go back to these prophecies, and they would see that the context is Israelite nations. I mean, no one would ever come to any conclusion other than that.
Yes. Now, in Romans 11:11, where they talk about so-called Gentiles being grafted in, this is another absolutely false doctrine. He says
you missed something, Eli. You missed something. You should just back up to where you were. Mine uses the term preordained people, and it uses predestinated,
right?
And
Sure.
Foreknew, foresee. There's a whole list of terms that all interconnect to each other. But if you look there's another interesting thing here, and if you just look up that quote about Elijah, it's talking about people when they slew the prophets. Okay, they have slain your prophets. That was the quote.
Yes.
Now think about that for a second. Who was it that slew the prophets that Elijah was talking about?
Well, it was the Israelites, the rebellious Israelites.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Jews against Christ. That's what I say. And they're Israelites against Christ, but we can use the term Jew. It makes no difference to the context. That's Jews against Christ versus who? The Jews for Christ. And where did that start? It started right there at Mount Sinai with the golden calf incident, right?
Right.
All right. And then they were killed for that. There was, actually, they were killed for the orgy, which was just before that. But at any rate, and then all that was at Mount Sinai. And from that point on, the whole reason they went through, and by the way, they were going through Saudi Arabia. They didn't go through the little pie-shaped.
Right. Yeah, it was all in Saudi Arabia. But hold on, David. Let me just interject here because there was a mixed multitude that came with the Israelites out of Egypt. And it was the people of the multitude who instigated this Baal worship episode. Okay, so there were non-Israelites among the Israelites. However, the Israelites partook of the rebellion, and so they're just as guilty. Back to you.
Well, yeah, but if you just follow through from Mount Sinai forward, he obviously talks about Israelites in Psalms and in other parts of the prophetic books. It talks about Israelites rejecting. That's blessings versus curses. He didn't when he gave blessings versus cursing, he wasn't talking about the mixed multitude.
No, he was. No, it's always
curses are about Israelites.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, it was the ones who were cursed for not following God's law that killed the prophets that Elijah's talking about here. He's not talking about the mixed multitude killing the prophets.
Right.
He's talking about Israelites who did not want God's law, which goes back to blessings versus curses, which is in Mount Sinai. This is where it started. Now, they want the whole reason they went 40 years in the desert is for the Israelites that rejected God's law. Now, if some of the mixed multitude were part of it, that's a side point. It really doesn't matter because he's judging Israelites for not following his law.
That's right.
So
it's judging Israel. It's always about Israel.
Exactly.
And the entire Bible is only about Israel. It's not about anybody else except our enemies as we confront our enemies.
And those who hate us is what he says.
That's right.
In fact, if you go back to Psalms and context, you find that the people that hated David were actually other Israelites.
Right. All kinds of jealousy.
Yeah. And what the other Israelites were doing, they were going out hiring non-Israelites to fight against Israel. Now, I know you focused on the Edomites, but it wasn't just Edomites. There was a whole list, and there's a whole list in Psalm.
Arabians, all kinds of people. Yeah,
Yeah,
Arabians, Nabateans.
yeah, I've got them on one of my lists, and I go through that on my prophecies of when I'm in Psalms. I go through those lists. There's 4 verses that gives you a whole complete list of who was with Israelites fighting against other Israelites. And it even says why they were doing it was because they wanted to take control of Israel, the whole land of Israel, and that's what that was about. But they were convicting Israelites for doing that. So that's why I call
Exactly.
Jews against Christ and Jews for Christ. And that's important because when you get to the New Testament, that's who was attacking Christ. It wasn't. I realize we had Edomites, and you may have had others. I mean, who knows? However, Christ wasn't convicting them. He was convicting Israelites who were in control, who wanted to kill him because they were still rejecting God's law.
Well, that's verified in Acts, in the book of Acts, where Peter addresses the Israelites assembled there. O men of Israel, you were the part of the mob that crucified Christ.
Right.
That's what he says right to their faces, and it says they were touched to the heart.
Yeah, that was in chapter 12 and 13 is where you see all that. And that's an important thing because that mentions the term Gentiles at the end of 13, which is, again it's about the nation.
Again, it's a bad translation.
Right. Nations. Yeah. So it's just a word threw in there to deliberately throw people off. However, even though you have that word here in Matthew, we just looked up the cross-reference to it, and in Luke it clarifies it. Now, what my point was is I made an open I was going to say
statement.
I mean, I offered to argue this in front of anybody who has letters beside their name.
Oh, okay, PhD.
Anywhere in the world that they want to try to point out that Gentiles are non-Israelites. I'm going to argue as long as we do a video of it so we can put this on the web.
Yeah, we'll have a record of it. Yeah.
Church can go read it and see what the argument is and see what the cross references are and see what the quotes are and put it in context. And I guarantee you, there ain't no pastor that's going to argue that openly on the web. It ain't going to happen because it's easy to show that they're wrong. And really, Eli, if you just back up to chapter 9 in Romans, that's the best place in the whole New Testament that shows they're wrong. Because there's 4 quotes in chapter 9 about Gentiles.
Right.
Still
I want to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the best place for a couple of reasons. Now, if you just back up to chapter 9, you'll see and start reading through here. This is another place where they want to talk about Gentiles. But right at the beginning of chapter 9, this is
verse 3.
The whole chapter is really about these 2 groups of people over here in verse 22 and 23. So when you start, get to verse 3. Now, mine uses kindred by race, but yours uses kindred, right? You're using a King James?
This is a King James, but it says brethren. It says brethren here. And also kinsmen. Brethren. Now brethren comes from Adelphos. Brethren comes from Adelphos, which means from the same womb. We're talking about the women who, namely Isaac's wife, Rebecca, Abraham's wife, Sarah, Jacob's wives. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about any old woman.
What does the verse say in yours? Does it say, mine says kindred, yours says what?
It says brethren and kinsmen. Kinsmen.
Continue reading. What does it say?
Yes. Kinsmen. Oh, according to the flesh.
All right. Mine says, who are Israelites? That's what it says. Okay. So kindred by race, who are Israelites. That's how
that's verse 4. Verse 4 says, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption, which is also a bad translation. It's huothesia is not adoption. Huothesia is placing as a son, namely, and when a child grows up, it becomes the heir. Yeah. It's not an adoptee. It's a son, a child, a daughter, not an adoptee.
Okay.
Bad translation.
What does it say after that? Just read it on.
and the glory. All these things were promised exclusively to the Israelites,
But doesn't it
and the
use that term
covenants.
promise? Doesn't it use that term promise or
It's
prophecy, or was it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let me read the whole thing.
Yeah,
The
read the whole.
glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the
Right.
service of God, and the promises.
All right, promises. Right. Well, there you go. That's all those prophecies that we just talked about, or all those
Right?
promises, all those prophecies, and there's only one group of people that that can possibly apply to. So, brethren, or however it wants to state it, has to be Israelites. I mean, there's no other way to read it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then he
Yeah,
gets into
exactly.
all right,
Exactly.
and if you just continue on to verse 6, he says, not all from those from Israel are Israel, and blah, blah, blah. So, of course, he's talking about Israelites. He confirms he's talking about Israelites right there.
Right.
And if you just continue on, he gives you, there's 8 quotes here in the first part of this. He goes
In
right
Isaac
back to
shall thy
about
seed be
cursing
called.
Jacob, rejecting Esau, and he has all these quotes. So, all these quotes give you evidence of who he's talking about, because none of these quotes are about non-Israelites. They're all about
And
Israelites,
not
and they're
about
all about
Gentiles.
prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
also, let me
it
interject here
confirms what
too
he's talking
that even the word Gentile, as used by Christians in the past, Christians used to use the word Gentile to refer to non-Christians. See, this word Gentile has changed its meaning over the decades, over the millennia, and now it's an utterly meaningless word. It should be
about.
tossed out. It should not even be in the scriptures because it is such a problematic and meaningless word. Back to you.
Well, it's the exact same thing that Eli with the term JEW, because if you look it up, you have even if you want to try to apply it to Israel, you still have a racial connotation, you have a geographical connotation, then you
Right.
have a religious connotation, and you can't take 3 different things and make them into one word because it's
Right.
impossible. They lose their
Exactly.
distinction.
Right.
They're
Right.
distinct in Scripture for a reason.
Yeah.
You can't take multiple terms, change them all to
Right.
one term. And besides that, within all of your Israel, you have house of Israel, house of Jacob, like we already said, they have different prophecies for different groups. So you can't just loop, put all that back under one term. It's impossible. It destroys all meaning of Scripture when you do that, and that's what they've done.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And by introducing this word Gentile into the Bible, both Old and New Testament, they have given themselves a false pretext by which to include non-Israelites into the prophecies and into the text, which is it's all bogus.
Yes,
The
but
word
we can.
Gentile has been used for that, and that's why it's bogus.
Yes, but we can use the cross references and we can use the quotes to put it back into context. And
Right.
every verse of every use of the term Gentiles, as we looked at on this chart over here,
Yeah.
which I can switch back
It's
to,
a
I can go
meaningless
back
word.
through
Yeah.
here, and I've already gone through all these videos on my
Right. Right.
already
Okay.
right here.
All right.
And
Okay. Well, we got a bit of a late start today, so let me just interject here. What Arnold Kennedy said about the word Gentile, and this comes from his article. This unfortunate word Gentile. So he agrees with us that the word Gentile is unfortunate. Just for people's understanding, how did the word Gentile come into the translations? Because there is no, how should I put it? There's no equal word for Gentile, Gentile supposedly meaning non-Israelite, in either Greek or Hebrew. There just is no such word that means non-Israelite in the Bible. There is no such word. But he says this word Gentile originated from the Latin Vulgate translation, where the Roman doctrine claimed that Rome had inherited the promises made to Israel. Okay, so here we have another false equation. Here is the Roman Church claiming to be Israel, which it never was. That is, the Roman Church had become the Israel of the Bible according to Catholic doctrine. Even more recently, Pope Pius XI reinforced this, saying, quote, spiritually, we Christians are Semites, unquote. Well, I would reject the idea that Catholics are even Christians. Continuing, the inference of the word Gentile in the Roman Catholic context is one who is not of Rome. In the English translations, Of course, in the Old Testament and New Testament, the Israelites were never referred to themselves as Romans. So there's a really tenuous connection there. In the English translations that were based upon the Latin Vulgate, this Latin word has carried on with a similar meaning, but instead of meaning not of Rome, it has come to mean not of Israel. In the minds of those to whom Rome and Israel were synonymous, there was no difference. To be of the Roman Catholic Church was to belong to and to be a part of Israel. So if you're a Gentile to the Roman Catholic Church, you are not a Catholic, all right, nor an Israelite, because they equated the two. In the minds of those to whom Rome and Israel were synonymous, there was no difference. To be of the Roman Catholic Church was to belong to and be part of Israel. Rome accommodated all races. Now here's where the Roman Church fails, because it redefines Israel as anybody who's a Catholic. All right,
Yeah.
folks, you see how you can define yourself into universalism?
Yeah.
Okay, this is bogus. This is bogus theology. Back to you.
Well, it's not only bogus, but like I said, we can on our shows, if you're going to do 3 shows by then, we can absolutely prove beyond a doubt
Oh, yeah.
that's going to be watching these
We
shows
just took a
by
few
looking at some of these
examples.
quotes
Yeah,
and showing what the quotes go to. And when
right.
it quotes, and right here in Romans where we're at, I was looking back on my chart. Can you see this chart here?
Okay, let me switch back. Hold on. Yes.
Okay, see, can you actually read that? I don't even know if you can read it, but it's
Yeah,
on
I
my
do.
website.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Matthew 4:15, Matthew
Okay.
6:32.
All right.
Which verse?
I was
Oh, you're
highlighting
highlighting.
Romans. Do you see what
Okay,
I'm
so you're
talking
highlighting. Okay.
about? Yeah, okay.
So
So
Matthew
we were
20:19.
talking about in Romans chapter 9, and it's 9:24, 9:30. There's 2 quotes about Gentiles. And I can tell you where those go, and that's very important because really here in Romans chapter 9, as we just established, he's talking about Israelites. And then when he got over there to verse 22 and 23, he's talking about people that well, my Farrar actually puts that really, really well. Let me just read it. It's talking
Okay.
about the potter over the clay to make from his own clay. So this is about forming people in the womb in Isaiah chapter 43. That's what this is
Right.
about. All right? To make from his own clay is God creating people, one article for distinction and another for common use. What if God, wishing to show his disposition and to proclaim his authority, endured with great forbearance a perverse instrument
Yeah,
determined
right.
on destruction? Does
Yeah,
that sound
namely
reasonable?
Israelites, rebellious
And so
Israelites.
that he
Yes.
might proclaim the wealth of his approbation upon the instrument of mercy which he had prepared for approval. So the instrument of mercy, as I said, was those who followed God's law, and the
Right.
ones that were perverse were the ones who rejected his law and rejected him. So
Yeah,
and he's
and only
specifically
Israel was
talking
given the
about
law.
people.
Yeah.
He's talking about people he formed in the womb here. So he's talking about our Israelites, but some Israelites reject the law
Right.
and some embrace it. So that was the whole point right there from Mount Sinai all the way through the Bible. That's what you get. You see 2 groups of Israelites, and some of them just do not or will not follow his law. They want to follow the law of Moloch and these other gods that
Yeah.
they
And
brought
they'll
out
be doomed.
with
They're
them.
not going to get into the kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
But here
not
again,
just about race. It is about race. You have to
it's
be an
grace
Israelite,
plus
as we've already
grace.
seen. However, it has to be of that race,
That's
and you
right.
have to embrace Christ and follow God's law. And that's exactly what it says in Revelation. It says that
Right.
12 times in Revelation. It talks about the 12 tribes in chapter 7, and then it reiterates, which is the 144,000. It reiterates that in chapter
Right.
14. But all those other ones, like chapter 12, are also talking about Israelites. And it says in 12:17, the ones who follow God's law, and they are the children of Sarah. That's what it's talking about in chapter 12. Follow God's law and teach the message of Christ, which is the gospel of the kingdom, which is about
Right.
Israelites and not non-Israelites. It's never about
Right.
that. And I said openly in my videos, I would argue that against anybody or any
Sure.
group of people on earth, it does not matter. I can bring them, put them on video, and absolutely prove they're lying. They have to be lying. There's no way any pastor can look these cross references up and
Yeah.
then teach this
And
any
not
other
know it's
way
referring to Israel. Right.
that the Gentiles applies to Israelites. It's
Yeah.
impossible to do it if you look
Right.
them up. All they can say is that they've never studied. That's all they can say.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You cannot get a doctorate, a PhD, or any of those little letters by your name and not study. So those guys have to be lying. They have to be.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, because it's not possible that they cannot understand this. This is really simple stuff, really.
It is simple. It's right there in your
Yeah.
cross references, and it's in the quotes. And anybody that's got letters by their name has to have looked that stuff up. They can't. They cannot claim ignorance.
Right. Okay, well, here, let's read verse 24, Romans 9:24. Even us, he's referring to us Israelites,
Right.
okay, whom he hath called, not of the, it says here Jews, but not of Judah only, because Israel was divided into two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Not of the house of Judah only, but also of the nations, the 10 northern tribes that were put away. This is what
some might could say Gentiles. They could see they could put Gentiles in that verse right there if they wanted to, and that's the term
that's what
Gentile.
it should be nations.
It uses 924. It uses the term Gentiles in some Bibles.
Exactly. Yeah, in this one, in the King James, it should be nations, and it's a reference to the nations of Israel.
Well, no, it should be Gentiles. Depends on your verse. See, that is in the book as Gentiles in King James. In some, but not all. Some of them say nations, and then some of them say heathen. In my Quran, it says heathen.
That's
Those
absurd.
are the three terms that Gentiles applies to: nations, heathen, and people. Right.
Yeah, heathen would be absolutely absurd here because the only non-Israelites can be heathen. Okay,
well,
so
that's true, but what it's talking about is the Israelites, the house of Israel, who were divorced. So it's talking about the divorced house of Israel, calling them heathen because they're kicked out of Israel. But you know, that was a prophecy that they would come back. But the point is, that's why it's calling them heathen. But it clarifies it up in the next verse, Eli, because then where it quotes, you have these four quotes. And if you get to the next verse, he says, as he says in Hosea, he's quoting Hosea 1:10 and 2:23. And when you go over to Hosea, it explains it's about the house of Israel and the house of Judah coming back together under Christ. So it's a prophecy about all 12 tribes coming together. The exact same thing that Jeremiah prophesied 5 times in Jeremiah says the same thing. Chapter 30, 31, 32, 33 says the exact same thing 4 times in a row about all 12 tribes coming together under one head, which is Christ. That's what he's quoting here. You can't get non-Israelite out of that.
Yeah, you can't. But if you substitute the word Gentile for nation and don't look up at the context of what Paul is talking about, and you simply go by the general definition of Gentile, meaning a non-Israelite, then you assume that Romans 9:24 is about non-Israelites, and therefore Paul is the apostle to the non-Israelites, which is hogwash.
But Eli, that is not the definition because it gives you the definition right here in the quote. The quote gives you
nobody looks it up. Nobody looks it up, right?
But people do look it up, and that's why they don't want to go back. Because then they realize that their pastors are lying to them when they look up the quotes. And then it quotes it again below. It quotes Isaiah 1:9 and Isaiah 10:22 and 23. And then when you go over to Isaiah, you can see, well, there's no one talking about over there in those verses in Isaiah and those quotes except Israelites. House of Israel, house of Judah. Same thing.
Exactly.
Where's the non-Israelite? There is no non-Israelite.
Not there, right? They're not there.
And you cannot have letters or beside your name that says doctorate or PhD or any whatever it is that pertains to teaching the Bible. Not know that it's not possible. It's not possible.
You got to know what you're talking about. Right, right. Okay, so it's really obvious from the context when you cross-reference all of the New Testament verses that have either the word Gentile, or some of them will have Hellen or heathen or any such word. But even the Hellenes were Israelites. We're talking about the Israelites that were scattered in the Hellenic world, in the Greco-Roman world. The Israelites were so numerous, there were millions upon millions upon millions of Israelites scattered throughout the Greco-Roman world. And these are the people that Paul was addressing when he referred to Hellenes, okay? He wasn't talking about heathen or Greeks that were not Israelites. He was talking about the scattered Israelites. Because none of these prophecies apply to anybody else except the Israelites, whether they were in Judah or whether they were in the Greco-Roman world scattered about. Okay? So this is really this is really very, very simple if you can overcome this idea that the word Gentile, number one, even belongs in the Bible, and number two, that when you see it, it refers to non-Israelites. Both of those are false.
Well, here's another good reason how people can prove this up. If you go back to my website again, right up below Jews versus Gentiles, I put all this stuff into context for people, but I've got this topical cross-reference chart that I made for people. And the important thing about this chart is you can go through the whole Bible and put any verse in any part of the book of Scripture. Doesn't matter where you are, you can put it into context. It's just this simple. And the reason is these terms that I've got on this chart, and I update this from time to time because I'm adding to it on a weekly basis. All these terms, what's important about the chart, all these terms in here all cross-reference or quote back and forth to each other. For example, if you were talking about foreordained versus foreknew, you see that right there? You also have foreseeing, foretold, foresaw, foreknowledge, foreknow. If you look up these verses in all throughout the Bible, you'll find that all of these only cross-reference to verses about the 12 tribes, house of Israel, house of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, blah, blah, blah. You won't find them cross-referencing to someone who is a non-Israelite. So
or Gentile.
I'm doing a whole chart of the whole Bible. I've been working on this for years. You'll find that all of these terms cross-reference back and forth, and I'm putting quotes in here too, which is very important.
Sure.
Starting with Genesis 1:1 all the way through to Revelation. You'll be able to flip to any part of the Bible, and you'll be able to see all the verses and then what's important in each part of the book of the Bible. That how all these terms connect back and forth to each other.
Right.
And you never see any of these terms connecting to non-Israelites.
Right. Well, this is covenant theology. Yeah. The covenants were made with the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they were fulfilled in Jacob's 12 sons, and they were never expanded beyond Jacob's 12 sons, ever. And that's true in the New Testament. The covenant theology does not change when you get to the New Testament, as you're showing with these cross-references. The theologians have it all wrong when they insert Gentile for any time the word nation or ethnos appears in the New Testament. The only justification you might have for using a non-Israelite translation there is if the context demands that we're not talking about Israelites but some other people. And they would have to prove that by historical comparison. Otherwise, it's got to be Israelites, as your cross-references here show.
Yeah, well, you can prove the point. But one reason I'm doing this is because people go to church, and I can assure you that a lot of people realize they're lied to, and they don't want to go back. They don't want to support a church that is just taking their money. So but they still need something to prove the point, and they need something that they can give to other people to prove who the Christian Israel message. That's what I call it. You can call it Christian identity. You can call it whatever you want, but it's about the Christian Israelites versus the non-Christian Israelites. Jews
Yes.
against Christ, Jews for Christ. You can call them tribes. You can call them whatever you want. It's all about the Israelites, one group against the other, because all these people are talking about all these Jews and how they're setting up the third temple and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they give no consideration to the fact that they're looking for a Messiah, a new Messiah. They don't want
Right.
anything to do with Christ, who's already come. They've already
That's
killed
right.
us. All this has already happened. They don't want anything to do with him. They're looking for a different Messiah, and
Yeah.
yet, and our government is fighting wars for them, and yet they're not even looking, to embrace
Right.
our
No, they utterly reject
here
Christ.
in the
Utterly
United
reject
States,
him.
allowing that kind of stuff to go on, allowing their country, their military to be used to fight for someone who does not embrace Christ, and never will, and never has.
They never have and never will. Yeah, because they are antichrists. Right?
While they themselves are the Israelites who embrace Christ and have done all these things over the last 2,000 years, it's only the white Israelite people
Mhm.
who embraced Christ, created the Bible and did all these things, and just built a nation and multiple nations. They're nations that fulfill all these prophecies have been fulfilled in the white Anglo-Saxon nations that embrace Christ, and they are letting themselves being used to support the Israelites that don't embrace Christ. Now,
Right.
if you can figure that one out, yeah,
Right. Right. One more, and back to Romans 11. There's a heading given to the King James translation here, which is in itself a commentary inserted, namely Gentiles grafted in.
right,
Okay.
right,
And by this commentary, by this title that they added, they're suggesting that non-Israelites will be grafted into the seed of the covenant people.
right.
Well, no, that does not happen. Okay. And I'll prove it.
Well,
First
there's
of
no
all, in Rome,
prophecy, but there is a prophecy about the house of Israel being drafted in.
exactly,
Right,
exactly. Right. Romans 11:11 says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Speaking about Israelites, he's not talking about anybody else but Israelites. God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation has come unto, here they have Gentiles, which is nations. Okay. He's talking about the difference between the house of Judah and the lost 10 tribes, house of Israel. With house of Jacob, we'll use house of Jacob to mean all 12 tribes, house of Judah for Judah and Benjamin, house of Israel for the 10 other tribes. Okay, those three designations. For to provoke them to jealousy. He's talking only to, for, by, and about Israelites and no other people. Let us jump down all the way to, actually, it's the very end where it talks about grafted in. I'm almost there. Okay, so now he talks about being grafted in. Okay, he says in verse 19, thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off
right, right.
that they might be grafted in.
Right. So the
Okay, so
houses
what
of
tree
Israel
were they broken
broken off.
off of?
Right, right,
What? Okay, they're
right,
not. If they're broken off the Israelite tree, we're not talking
right,
about other trees. We're still talking about Israelites exclusively.
right, right. The
Okay,
branches were broken off, which was the house of Israel being divorced. Those are the
right?
branches broken off, and then they're
Exactly.
grafted back in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So it's not a different tree. It's not a Gentile tree. It's an Israelite tree.
that's not even hard to understand, but you still, you need to be able to have somebody put that into context. So what I was just pulled up
Exactly.
here for you to
Context.
look
Yeah.
at. I don't know how this is going to look, but at any rate, I've got another chart on
Yeah.
quotes. I've got all these
Yeah.
here, and I went through and put all those into
Yeah.
context. So when you
Okay. All
all
right.
these,
Okay. I'd say that is pretty sufficient for our first study on this subject. And and then we can do more because you've got like hundreds of cross references. People would probably demand more proof, because this idea that the Gentiles, that Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles, is so widespread. It's as widespread as it is false. And a lot of people are going to require a bit more convincing than what we've provided here today. Okay? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we
All
can,
right.
like I said, we can prove it beyond a doubt, or at least with the preponderance of evidence, however you want to
Sure.
look at it. And we can argue it in front of any group of pastors anywhere in the
Oh,
world. It doesn't
absolutely.
matter, and we can make the point. I've looked up all the quotes in the New Testament, and most of those are prophecies. Like I said, and all these prophecies interconnect back to each other. And I've looked up all the cross references, or you should really say it, unique cross references. There's about 3,000 unique cross references in the New
Okay.
Testament, and 300 quotes. And by unique, I mean ones
Right.
that are used. They're all used different. They don't just go back and forth to each other. In other words,
Right.
they
Right.
go to unique verses in the Old Testament, for
Oh,
example.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, here, let's go one more then. Romans 11:26. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, because he's quoting prophecy from the Old
Quoting
Testament.
Isaiah 59. Can you read that?
Yeah, no, I'll just read that. You read Isaiah 59. There
Well,
shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Well, again, the context is Jacob, right?
right.
Okay.
The quote is
So go ahead.
Isaiah 59:20.
Okay. That's direct. It's not a direct quote. But it's a reference to Isaiah 59:20. Okay, and that the book of Isaiah was written to Israel and only to Israel, as were all the books of the Old Testament,
Well,
and therefore only in
it's
the New
listed as a
Testament as well.
quote. It just depends on your Bible. It's listed as a quote.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's
All right.
300 quotes.
Yeah. So in general, what we're saying is that wherever you see the word Gentile, scratch it out, replace it with nations, and then the context will prove to you that we're talking about Israelite nations and not non-Israelites.
Yeah, if
That's
you really
how
want to
I
get a handle
understand
on
the
it,
Bible.
like I said, I've got 7 videos. It's about 5 hours I've already put into that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Putting that together so people can see, and they can just get the chart over here off my site, download that, and then walk over here and you know,
Yeah.
and then get this other one. And the stumbling stone thing. There's a whole. That's the biggest teaching in the whole Old Testament is the stumbling block. I've
Right.
got it highlighted here. I don't know if you're looking at that. And then I've got all that. And I've got these cross references forward and backwards. I've got them New Testament and then I've got them Old Testament
Right.
because you need to be able to see the Old Testament link. In other words,
Yeah.
starting in Genesis, the link,
Right.
because this really
Right.
establishes
Side by
context
side. Very
as you
good.
read
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Old Testament. You got to take note of your cross references. This is very important. I'm going to show you something that's real important about that, which is this Genesis 12:1 and 3, which quote
Mm-hmm.
Acts. Because when you
Right. Quoted by Acts.
look
Right.
at your quote to Acts, is where you're going to see it's talking about Christ speaking to Abraham. It's in
Right.
Acts. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Your quote.
Yeah.
But when you're
And
reading Genesis, you don't notice it's the quote, so you don't go look at the quote. And then when you're in Acts, you might not notice that that's a quote back to the Abrahamic covenant. So no one ever looked at it. But if you got letters beside your name, I guarantee you've looked at this stuff. So when they don't
right.
teach this correctly, then what's the use of giving them a doctorate or a PhD if they're not teaching correctly?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and Genesis 12:3 is the famous quote that if you go against Israel, then you will be damned. And if you go with Israel, you will be blessed. Well, that's us. It's not
Right.
the Edomites.
Right.
It's not talking about the Edomites.
Well, and it has to
Okay.
be Christian Israel. Obviously, it wouldn't be talking about those of
Right. It would
Israel
be
who
in
reject.
Acts.
So
It
it
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
be
in
talking about the
in the book
modern
of
day
Acts if it were
Jews who
talking
are
about
looking for some
Jews.
new group of people.
Right. The
Yeah,
Jews were
we'd only
trying to
be
kill
looking for
them.
the ones that
Right.
accept.
Right. Okay, yeah, so it really becomes obvious once you understand covenant theology, and covenant theology applies only, exclusively to Israel and to no other people, the 12 tribes.
Exactly.
All right,
I look
okay.
at some of the stuff like the stumbling block that is just all through the Old Testament, but you could easily miss it. So I've got all this stuff laid out for anybody that just wants to learn. But the whole idea to me is to do these videos And then when you look at my website, what I tell people to do, Eli, because think about it. What do you have to give to people besides? I mean, you've got tons of audio, old audio on TalkShoe, and you've got audio all over the place. I don't even know where it all is. And you've got stuff on Eurofolk, and then you've got stuff on video and all that.
Anglo-Saxon Israel and other places, right?
Right, but it's kind of all spread out. So to me, the best thing to do, what I do, is I did a couple videos on my channel to show people how to do this. I show them how to on using a USB thumb drive. I show them how they can get a thumb drive. They can download all of your stuff, put it on a thumb drive, and they've got it all in one place. And then they can plug it into their TV, and that's what my second video shows, how to put it in their TV, and they can sit right there at their high-def TV and either listen to it or watch it or whatever, whether it's video or audio. And that's how to put all your stuff together in one place, and then hand them something, and it has all of your stuff on it. Everything. I give people these videos.
Time worth of research. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Right.
But people like video, and maybe some like audio. I don't know, but that's the whole point. So that's the way I started doing it. And then if they want their, the other thing is about keeping yourself from getting censored. Here's my thought about that. If you can give them a video on a thumb drive, what you can do is once you've given them these thumb drives, you can make videos that you never even put on the web. Or you can come over here to your channel, which go to your channel, and then do a video that talks about what is in the video. In other words, you don't put the video up there, but you put a video to talk about what they're going to get, what you talk about in that video.
Yeah, a teaser video. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
They don't have the content. You're not putting the content on YouTube. You're only saying what you're giving it. They don't know what's in the content because they don't have the video. So then your followers send you and have their thumb drives updated once every month or two and get those new videos.
Yeah. Okay, I think we did a really good job explaining, the problem with the word Gentiles and how it deviates from the covenant theology that the Bible is all about. Okay, so very good, David. Excellent job. Okay, I've got to take off. I've got other things I still have to do tonight, so glad I was able to do this video with you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to stop the recording. It says it's an hour and 6 minutes.